Good morning to all the students of International Business of Khan University. My name is Imtiaz Sharifi and we'll be going to the lecture of International Business. Especially today's chapter is about globalization. Before that, we would like to keep it short and interesting so students can have fun while learning it, because usually this kind of platform is a bit boring and most students may not like it. I am personally new to it, so I'm sure most of you will also be new to this whole concept. Let's start off by giving you a quick example of this guy. His name is Ray Ramond, and how I have linked it to globalization is, before we start this chapter, let me give you an example of how far globalization can go. Most of you may not know this gentleman called Ray Ramond. It's his only picture on the internet. You will not find any other picture of him on the internet also. It's a funny story about him, to be honest. He wanted to buy his wife some lingerie, but he was too embarrassed to buy it in the shops, in the main shopping centers. So just because of his nervousness and because of his shyness, he came up with an idea of opening an online store. So he thought, like mostly like him, there would be other men also interested in the idea of buying lingerie for their wives, and it could be a start of a business idea. So basically he loans 40,000 from the bank, and he loans another 40,000 from his in-laws, and he opens a shop called Victoria's Secrets. If most of you don't know what Victoria's Secrets are, please Google on internet what Victoria's Secrets are. It's a very famous shop selling lingeries, and most of the famous models in the world wants to work for Victoria's Secrets. Well, at that time he makes a profit of 500,000 in his first year. He starts a catalog, to be honest, an online catalog which men can order from the catalog and can be delivered to their homes also. And then he opens 3 more stores, and after 5 years some company by the name of Leslie Waxner comes up to him and he says, would you like to sell the company to us at $4 million? He says, guess what, I have only invested up to $100,000 and the return on investment is $4 million. That's quite a lot of money. So he sells the company for $4 million. I think it should be end of story, because everyone is happy, right? No, except 2 years later the company globalized it, and its net worth jumped up to $12 billion. Ray Ramond was still alive when he heard the potential of the company, how far it had globalized. He jumped off a bridge of Golden Gate in America and kills himself. I mean, at the end of the day, poor guy just wanted to buy his wife a nice pair of lingerie. Let's kickstart our lesson with this example. Today's table of content are globalization, types of globalization, advantages, disadvantages, international business practices, importance of international business, challenges of international businesses, import, export, and FDI. I do apologize, most of you may know some of the content of this table, but this has been given to me as a lecture core outline which I have to deliver to my international business students. I mean, first of all, let's start off with what is globalization. Globalization is intermixing of various cultures, economics, people, and ideas which help the countries to come close with the purpose of trade and sharing cultures. I mean, if you look at this point of view, Most countries have a saying, think global, act local. The cultures and the business that we do with Japan, with America, it is completely different business, market, food, accessories, clothes, brandings, everything. So we need globalization so we can interact with other people and cultures, and how best we can make a sustainability. One thing about sustainability is how you measure a company based on profits, and thanks to globalization we can do that. It integrates the markets of different countries for the purpose to benefit of all. I mentioned earlier, you're just looking at different cultures of different countries, and at the end of the day, what is matter in business is profits. So the whole idea of benefit here refers to profit. The types of globalization, this is where it gets interesting, because there are various types of globalization, but they are ranked in terms of how important each one is. If you are a business student and you want to focus on key areas, in my opinion, the types of globalization exist with financial globalization. It's mostly to do with financial markets, stock markets. Most of the trade nowadays, if you look at Dow Jones, Nikkei, the Hong Kong, the Shanghai, all of these are stock markets which do all their trades online. I'm sure Alibaba is a fine example, Facebook is another example, Google, Apple, all these major companies, they do their sales or their financial gain is through stock markets. If you look at any company, let me give you Facebook as an example. When it got first launched, it had a good value share in the market cash wise, but when it went online in the stock market, they valued each share at $42, but suddenly after the first 2 months the shares plummeted to $16. I think afterwards, when they realized that there is a potential for globalization, for our ads on mobile, the shares jumped back at $80. So financial markets, stock markets are key. Integration of the Dubai financial market. Most of you may be aware, fuel prices have, which was $120 per barrel, is trading at $25 per barrel today. I just read the news today that you have oil producing companies, the OPECs, they are cutting down 10% of the whole oil trade. So the stock have jumped back up to $35 a barrel. Why I give you this example of financial? Because everyone sitting at their home does their businesses through online to their stock markets, and it's a key area for all developed companies. Then the most important one is the economical globalization. Again, you look at each markets. If you are going to do globalization in terms of market, you have to be awake at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. Look at how other countries are performing. You have to be awake like hours ahead of what your neighboring countries, whether it's China, whether it's Japan, whether it's US, and you know exactly what the stock markets are happening in those countries, so you can reflect them back into your own country. Technology is the most important boom of the 20th century is technology. Organization regimes, as you know, every country have different set of organizations for their economical activities. You look at the corporate labor. I think this is quite an interesting one. Most of you know the labor in Bangladesh, in Thailand, in China is cheap. Honda, a famous Japanese maker, are making most of their company and plants in India. Why? Because labor is cheap. Most of the famous brands like Nike, you could argue, the phone that you have, the Apples and the Samsung, they all have factories in companies like India or China. Why? Because of the free trades that they allow, and also the labor. because a labor in US charges $25 to $30 per hour. Mostly in big companies like Tesla and iPhone, they charge up to that much. But if you go to other countries, they charge $1 per hour, even 50 cents per hour. In that country, in that context, that hourly wage is far more than what they get in US. We also have to learn the technology diffusion. Diffusion is a word, how it spreads in terms of new products. Today's information of technology is all about data, how data can be sold in terms of technology, products, softwares. It's a new form of globalization, is the technology, and most countries like the Indians and the Bangladesh have emerged as a key information exchange and hub. Let's not forget the political globalization. Where WTO is World Trade Organization. It's basically for those traders who establishes themselves as world trade, and they want to do it with different countries. But one thing you must know about this World Trade Organization is the tariff. Each country have got a different tariff. For example, if you want to export a BMW car to countries like India, they have got a 80% tax on the car. So that's why BMW and other cars cannot penetrate the Indian market. They have got their own versions of Jaguar, which they produce in their own country, and the tariff is cheaper. So you have to know what WTO and World Customs are thinking. You know, customs have got this SAFTA. SAFTA is like all trade should have a custom tariff of average 5%. But most countries, in order to boost their own production, they put a huge tariff on the other country that is exporting luxury goods predominantly, because if a country is doing bad in terms of importing country, they tend to have low tariff on their basic food commodities. But if a country is exporting luxury goods and items, then for that purpose the tariff is based on a higher fees and higher tariff rate. Obviously monopoly plays a key power, because if you have governments that restrict certain products not to come into the country, they play with the government and they tell them that this certain product cannot come to this country because of this purposes. A fine example would be an energy drink that we had in Afghanistan. It used to come quite a lot before, but now the government is pushing for our own homemade energy drinks or soft drinks to be produced internally. Why? Because this is a political globalization decision. Hence the international agreements have to be looked upon, how international communities look at this political decision. And it's a combination, like OPEC is a oil producing exporting countries. While making a decision, all these major countries of oils have to be consulted before making the amount of barrels that is produced on a daily basis, in millions of barrels that are. Saudi Arabia is number one, Venezuela is there, Kuwait, Qatar. These are all major companies that are key decision makers of OPEC. We will be studying more about the cultural globalization. You must know the values, the ethics, the belief, the lifestyle of each country before making your product into the global share and a global sphere of how to manage profits, basically. You also look at the ecological globalization. This is mostly to do with the amount of poverty, the food reduction, the population growth, the biodiversity. It plays a key area to which country you want to target, which product might be best suited for that country. Most important of all, the sociological globalization. You look into the changes in how fast a country can adapt to its economic activities, to its cultural, to its social. Music could be a fine example of US and UK have got similar style of music. But if you look at the music of China and Japan, they tend to be different. I mean, most of you don't even know who a famous Korean or Chinese star is, but I'm sure most of you know who is American or a UK pop star is. Why? Because how do you merge different sociological genes in UK? For Levi's they do one kind of trading, but for US they do another kind of trading. It's mostly because one country is much more fatter than the other country, so you cannot sell your product in a country where they wear less jeans. Fine example is Saudi Arabia. Most people tend not to wear jeans there. They wear their own traditional abaya, especially with females also. So you've got to be very careful the amount of budget you want to spend in a globalized nature. There have been 3 waves of globalization. I mean, the book that I recommended all of you to read, it is mentioned clearly when it started. Basically, it started in 1492 till 1880. That was the first wave where there was people used to trade from ships at that time from one country to the other country. That's the time where America and Europe had mostly the lead in terms of taking one product to another country. It was mostly spices. I mean, the spices market was quite huge at that time also. I was 1492 till 1800. Then the 1800 2000 started. I mean, the industrial revolution started, to be honest. This was when factories were manufacturing things, they were producing things, and one country used to buy it from the other country. And that's the whole global market, to access the global market. And the third one is the 2000 till now. As we are all aware, I think the big bang theory, the big happened with the boom of the internet. I think the fiber optics and also the software and all these things played a key role in coming back to the 2 components of globalization. The emergence of historical separate national market into a global market. I mean, Samsung sells its Galaxy phones to all over the world. Many goods and services are available everywhere in the world, which means the base of Samsung is, to be honest, Korea. But if you look at their whole USPs, the unique selling product, is they on research and development. They select a new model, they produce that new model, but phones are sold everywhere and everyone can sell their spare parts, their batteries, their screens, but they will not in a position to produce, manufacture phones. Again, the globalization of production, if you look at BMW is produced in Mexico and in America also, but the whole point of them is because once they produce in Mexico, they have a lower tariff and shipment for them. If they produce BMW S5 series in Germany, then the cost of that, taking it all the way to America, which is approximately, in my opinion, 10 hours flight, along with the tariff fees, the car will cost 3 times as much as the production car. But once it's producing in a neighboring country called Mexico, and they have got cheap tariffs between these 2 countries, the BMW S5 makes a huge profit in America, and is quite a good car to drive also. The last part is, obviously, if some products are expensive in some parts of the world, because you have to pay shipping, that adds to the cost. And in fine example of BMW, the German luxury car, has came up with this clever idea of setting up a branch all the way in Mexico. Why are they not setting a branch in America? If anybody can answer that quiz question, it will be appreciated, because they're setting up a branch in Mexico and they're shipping it back to US. Why not set up a manufacturing plant in America? Can any one of the students listening to this may answer in WhatsApp group? It's a bit blurry, but I'm sure you will be able to see what the advantages and disadvantages of globalization are. First of all, it's easier to communicate throughout the boundaries, which means you have a new market and you have got easy access of communication once you set up there. Easier to travel. Once coming back and forth, the cultural interchange, you get to learn a lot more from what different ideas and different diversity are. International trade of goods and volumes are increased. You get at the end of the day better and cheaper products. You learn more in terms of improvement of new technology. The cheaper the product increases, the purchase power increases, because more people will tend to buy a product if it's in large volume and good quality coming from a different country through globalization. Once trade volumes have gone into globalization, the transport of the product is much more easier and faster. If you look at some of the disadvantages, it's basically it creates unemployment, because most companies tend to look for cheap labor, and when the product or goods are maybe installed or produced in another country, you lose your own power of unemployment in your own country. You have what they call there's no free markets, like you have no control in terms of circulation of money, because it's gone to different countries. Ethically it might be not wrong, but still people consider it to be ethically wrong. Big companies are usually the most winners of the house. The business community and the big companies, because they tend to invest a lot, they tend to produce in mass. At no point I think small companies have an advantage, because with big businesses come big profit and big savings also, to be honest. One key area of globalization is because children in least developed countries, Bangladesh, India, Thailand, Bhutan, they produce so many goods. Could be shoes, could be clothes, could be watches, could be phone. They are exploited. What does exploitation means? They tend to work at a young age. They leave schools, and that's how they children should not work in. That's the whole concept. But since they have to work because of they provide necessity foods or for their families, so young children are mostly exploited. The mixture of cultures can lead to racism, intolerance, and loss of globalization nationality. In this sense means that you are bound to have racism, intolerance, unacceptance in most countries, because once you go with your product from a country which is developed, which is tolerance, and you go into a country, those country will say, come on, you're taking all our jobs, you're taking the big salaries, you're making lose our businesses, go out of businesses. Hence the whole xenophobia of this intolerance is going to be there. Small companies have to go out of country because they cannot compete with the multinationals. It's true, because they cannot cope with the amount of big. In UK you have got Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Asda's, and they are eating away the small grocery shop, corner shops, or food shops. They are big supermarkets, and they are deliberately positioning their place in such areas where there are corner shops or food shops or small stores, and the small stores go out of businesses because people tend to shop in big supermarkets quite a lot. As a result of all this, the gap between the poor and the rich always increases. International business, we have come to square one, though this slide should have been in page 1. What is international business definition? I'll go, what is international? It means something involving more than a country. It means involving between more than one nation. International law applied by more than one country, spoken by more than one country. I think that's the whole concept of international. And what is a business? A business is also known as an organization involved in the trade of goods and trade of goods and services to consumer. The goal is for sales to become more than expenditure, resulting in profit, or any profit-seeking organization is business. I think that's the whole point, is you have to make money. And how do you make money? By making less expenditures. International business, if you combine both of them together, it comprises all commercial transactions that takes place between two or more regions, countries and nations beyond political boundaries. That's the definition of international business. Why do we go international? You can tap into a world of billions of people. I think you have a potential, because you may not, your business is not selling much better at home, so you have got a leverage of doing much better if you promote, sell or globalize your product into another country. If you have got 5-6 products, chances are 2-3 will not work in your own country, so you have got to diversify and go international. Companies that do international business grow faster and fail less. That's according to business.gov website. Coming back to square one, if you go international, it increases sales, it improves profit, it increases innovation. The company management usually decides to enter foreign market. I mean, what this means is, you are owner of a company and you have got 5-6 different kinds of products. Let's just assume it's jeans. Then you have to know which country you target to, when, where, how you target. Or you could be selling fruits. Let's just imagine Afghanistan. We have got a good market for going international with our pomegranate, with our saffron, with jalghoza. To be honest, it's how, where, which country. You can't just say, let me sell my pomegranates all the way to US. Will your cost of transportation allow you to sell your pomegranates in America? You choose your neighboring country. Why? Because of profit. And most important of all, you have a competitive advantage. That means whatever your goods is, it either must have a selling point, whether it's low cost, whether it's fashionable, whether it's brand. But if you're international, compared to your local companies in Afghanistan or in other country, you have gone international, and then you tend to, if it's not earning more profit in your own country, chances are it could be earning more profit in another country. Fine example is Alakozai tea. You could argue in countries like Dubai, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Alakozai tea is number one. And it's selling fast and it's making a good profit also, I think. So that's competitive advantage. The importance of international business is because it helps the national economy. It's important to meet the imports of industrial needs, like what are required for export and import. International business gives you an idea. The grants, loan for industrial development, you do your own debt servicing, how much the country is in debt. We're talking at a national level, to be honest. If our country is severely in debt, then our country has got to sell abroad for us to make more money, which in essence is economic growth. Profitable use of natural resources. We, Afghanistan, we say we are a country full of natural resources. If we do tap into our minerals, our gas, our potential, and if we do go globalization, I think this is $1 billion worth of resources, natural resources sitting here right now. Quality good production usually have moderate prices. to improve the image of the product as well of the country is in the minds of foreign customers. Like, assume when a good is coming from China and when a good is coming from Japan, I'm sure people tend to buy the Japanese product more because country invest in their R&D, research and development. The products are usually twice, thrice more expensive because the image that we have of that country is the fact that it's a well maintained company in terms of keeping up the quality standards, also it increases employment opportunities within the country and in the other country because you need managers, you need workers, you need laborers for both countries. It obviously increases national income because whichever country you tend to be the mother company, then the actual company that you have invested or you have opened a plant or you have diversified, the money always come back to the main core company. Usually have companies in Panama where you cheat the government in terms of your taxes or you hide them from the national income, but in terms of value, the home country tends to gain more income. And most important of all, it increases the standard of living in the people. How is it important to the exporting firms? Well, basically it helps the country, the firms who are exporting, they also gain a better share of the market. If the domestic demand for the product is not sufficient to consume the production, the firm may take a decision to enter the foreign market. In this way, he can equalize the production and demand. I'm sure this is straightforward. Sometimes you have a product which is about to enter, which is not making enough quality goods. I'm sorry, you are making enough quality goods, but the consumption is not sufficient for the local market. So what you do is you enter a foreign market where your production is equal to your demand. How about the capacity? This is quite a good you use your capacity like how India have done. It's a good model. If the installed capacity of the firm is much more than the level of the demand of the product in the domestic market, he can enter international market and utilize his unutilized installed capacity. This is a fair example, I think, in the IT sector. Most countries lack capacity. We are talking about manpower, and you go into another company, you obviously have got sufficient demand in your own country, you know about it, but when you go to a different country, the capacity of your manpower or your softwares, it can be utilized much more better, and you are in a position to export the surplus production. You are in a position where other countries can also gain from your globalization also. And obviously, coming to the most important part, the export business is more attractive for its higher rate of profitability. The higher profitability rate gives extra strength to the firm. Fine example, Afghanistan. Whatever products we export from Afghanistan is zero tariff. What else do you want? Like, if you are exporting, you are not charged no money. Why? It helps the national income. You are making more growth of any product, of any item that we have. We sell it to a foreign country, and this way we all make money. You have to realize there are many challenges for international business. Each country have got their own laws and regulations. You must know beforehand what laws. Some company may not allow you to import certain goods and items because their regulation does not allow or prohibit certain food from different countries. Cost is a major factor. It can kill your business or it can make your business. This is the only key factor that will drive you and your company towards international business. You must calculate all possible costs that may incur. How do you get the product delivered in an economical way? When you become managers, hopefully the companies, your bosses, will only care about how to keep costs down. Those managers that help the company in benefiting from cost usually tend to win more. You also have different cultures because communications are different. language is different, your relationship with the people from other cultures are enhanced. Yes, when you are aware of their culture differences, such as communication style, religion beliefs, power structure, and attitude towards time and work. This is a key challenge, I think, and I'm sure before going international business, you must know and how to mitigate these communication difficulties. Payment methods, you must know which currency is charged at each country. You must know how much loss you're making or profit you're making while going into a different company. In order to secure your business, always select the safest option for you. You must be aware of currency exchange rates of buying or selling your product. Drastically, it changes because if you don't know the last minute how much the currency has gone up and down, it will hit your business big time. And do keep in mind, payment methods and currency rate are a key. Choosing the right shipping method. You must also know that while choosing going international globalization, which option would best suit you for your goods. Like, is it worth going by air logistics? When you want to reduce the cost, you cannot choose air, you have to choose a ship, for example. And the expertise, the logic, the experience. A small company cannot afford mostly going through air, so they have to choose employees that are best skilled for making shipments. Like, they have to know which country, which area, which border will charge less. Hence, so the key important is logistics, starting the right shipping methods. Economic union, you must also know that in every country except Afghanistan, they have got an economic union, a trade union. It helps them negotiate terms even with their own company and with other countries also. To be honest, they tend to choose the amount of wages that they want to work upon, and the timings, the conditions, the leaves. So you are just playing with their demands of their own team's economic union. Most big companies in UK and US, they have got unions, and if those unions go on a strike, you're out of business, and if those unions don't want to work with you, you're out of business. So you have to keep in mind that challenges how to satisfy the economic union. Also, most policy of countries, the country follows a strategy of importing capital goods with the latest and self-sufficient technology. In most countries, they only allow those products that are good for their infrastructure, for their buildings, for their education. It usually restricts those goods that tend to lower their quality of whatever they have internally in their own country. They tend to lower that, because they don't allow it in most cases, because it just brings in goods that are not worthy of them, or they increase their tariff upon them. This is quite a good and interesting map. We learn which country does what at its best. I'm sure one country you can see down there which produces something that not many other countries produce. The black are mostly petroleum, and they also call the OPEC countries, crude oil. The black, they have the oil producing, exporting countries. They dictate the whole price, the barrels, the future of oil, and these countries play a major role in how we consume our fuel. You can see some countries like Canada, America, they have got capital goods in terms of vehicles, the General Motors, the Mustangs, they come from there. Some countries down at the bottom have got gold, diamonds. I'm sure you know they're Africa. You can see down in New Zealand, they also have got some of gold, some of dairy products here and there. Why I give you this example is just to give you an idea of, if you want to do a business, from which country do you buy to which country. I mean, if you want to go to motor vehicles and you want to go to Canada, then you choose the country of UK, France, Germany, all does excellent machineries. And Russia is not a car producer. Yes, they have got their own cars, but they're not as good cars as how the UK and the US are transporting. If you want to go into the mining field, you have to choose those countries below Canada. As you can see, they produce copper, they produce natural gas. It's a good map because it gives you an idea. I'm sure first of all you must be very well aware of countries also, and then it will give you an idea of what to buy from each country. This import, I'm sure all of you know what import is, but import is a good or service brought into one country from another. The word import derives from the word port, since goods are often shipped via boat to foreign countries. The United States imported $3.1 billion between January and August 2018. During the same period, it exported 1.5 trillion in goods. I think my question to you, gentlemen, to all of you, some of you listening to my lecture already, how much did Afghanistan import and how much did we export? The graph will not give you a clear indication of Afghanistan, but it can give you clear indication of what US, Canada, Germany, Holland are importing or exporting. Well, this is another good example of how much companies tend to import, and as you can see, USA is always number one in terms of $2.4 billion worth of import. China, Germany, Japan following on. And what do they import? Cell phones, vehicles, crude oil. The percentages are quite clear. And China, what are they good at? Mexico, what they are good at. Japan, they are good at. The graph shows also figure 5 top good exported to US by other countries. This is quite a good map. If you want to become a businessman and you want to do business with USA, you should calculate the percentage of what do they buy the most. Should I export fuel? Should I export vehicles? Should I export electrical cars, telecommunication equipment, toys, games? This gives you an idea of what the country wants and what other countries have exported to them. So it's a good map to compare and contrast. Similarly, we come into export. I'm sure export is someone who sends good out of a country to be sold. If you are in import-export business, you bring goods from one country into the country as well. Afghanistan imported $7 billion from January till August 2018, like in 1 year, for example. During the same period, it exported $1 billion in goods. So you can see our maths is not equilibrium. It's not correct. And you can see the oil. Why I have given this map is because these OPEC countries have got revenues in terms of their export, because I'm sure most of it, number one as always is Saudi Arabia, because they've got a huge $182 billion worth of fuel trade. Number two, Russia, 129. Number three, Iraq. If you add them all up together, it becomes $1 trillion business, mostly going to export. I mean, I can divide them how much of it is imported and exported if you're interested also. What countries export mostly, to be honest, you have to know. I've given China a good example of before this virus. Business export goods and services where they have a competitive advantage. I mean, the whole point is they must be better than the existing company that they have. They export that reflect the company's comparative advantage. If you look at the China's export consumption from 1995 to 2007, things have changed dramatically. I mean, the electrical things, what China exported from 1995, they were at 22%, and now they are gone up to 45%. And if you look at their textiles, they have gone down from 29 till 15%. I would like to ask the class the question, why have it gone down from 29 to 15%? Anyone, please, more than happy to hear their thoughts. Countries have competitive advantage in commodities, like they have a natural ability to produce. For example, Kenya, Jamaica and Colombia have the right climate to grow coffee. That gives them an edge in exporting coffee. You can't grow coffee in other countries because we do not have the right climate, and it's not the good quality coffee always comes from those countries. What countries export? India population, its comparative advantages: workers speak English and are familiar with English laws. These skills give them an edge as affordable call center workers. Fine example again, that US, well, the graph should not be confused with what the top writing says. It just gives you an example that Indians tend to export much more of their call center skills, and most are based in UK, in US, and they're quite good at that also. But then again, we go to US exports to China versus rest of the world. In one graph you can see all the way from 2000 to 2010. I need to update this. This is quite old. I'll share with you guys 2020 version also, if you can see, and that's 4.4% of the rest of the world, the US exports to China, and it's 19% that it does to China. This will give you a good idea of how much US exports to China along the rest of the world. Well, how exports affect the economy? When the country exports more than an import, it has a trade surplus. When it imports more than export, it has a trade deficit. I'm sure it's simple to understand. Most countries want to increase their export. Their companies want to sell more. They have sold all they can in their own country. Then they want to sell abroad also. The more they export, the greater their competitive advantage. They gain expertise in producing the goods and services. They also gain knowledge about how to sell into foreign markets. Simple. Government encourages export because export increases jobs, they bring in higher wages and raise the standard of the living. A country with large reserves can use it to manage their own currency value. They have enough foreign currency to flood the market with their own currency. That lowers the cost of their export in other countries. If you have any questions on this matter, you can WhatsApp me, but I think it looks straightforward. Let's go to a complete different subject. It's called FDI, foreign direct investment. Simple. Foreign direct investment is basically controlling ownership in a business enterprise in one country by a business based in another country. Simple. If you have a business in one country and you want to have FDI, foreign direct investment, in other countries. Usually countries in Europe tend to invest in Brazil and Switzerland because they combine. They have it can be buying a company in the target country, or by expanding operations of an existing business in that country. Simple. In its classic definition, a company from one country making a physical investment into building a factory into another country. What does FDI include? FDI can be having mergers and acquisition. That's when two companies get together and want to buy. Building new facilities. I mean, most companies from UK and US, they're quite good at building metros because they have done it in their own country. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Dubai and Qatar, they much prefer to get their FDIs from those countries. It reinvests profits earned from overseas operation. In a narrow sense, foreign direct investment refers just to building facilities. I mean, the whole point over there is like you building new infrastructure. That's the whole point of foreign direct company. The existing country do not have sufficient money, hence they ask for a foreign direct investment. FDI usually involves participation in joint venture. I mean, they have to work together. They have to report their balance statements and their income earnings together, and mostly the transfer of technology. They have to share what technology they are aware of. Types of FDI: you have a horizontal FDI. It arises when a firm duplicates its home country base activities in host country through FDI. Simple. It's basically a company is duplicating its whatever they're doing. Could be Samsung in US, and they go to Taiwan and they duplicate the whole activities through foreign direct investment. Platform FDI, it's when foreign direct investment from source country into destination country for the purpose of exporting to a third country. I wish there was a blackboard here I could choose. I mean, basically you are investing into a second country. I mean, whatever it was, could be phones, could be TVs. You have invested in that country, but your whole purpose is to export to third country. That's called platform FDI. What's the incentives of FDI? They have got a low tax, they have got preferential tariff, they have got the export processing. Mostly it's because low tariff and it's cheaper. You get a free land. Mostly some countries give you free land or loan to come work on this infrastructure. It's good because after a couple of years it is good for that own country or nation in terms of labor, and it's locating for low labor. You basically in a country where there's much manpower and you ask them to come and work for you, your labor also becomes lower and people and families are benefited from that. The importance of FDI, I will stop the class here to 20 slides today. I will see how it goes on, and if you have any questions with the method, we will continue the session next week. For today this should be sufficient, hopefully. Thank you all. It's 51 minutes. You can contact me regarding, well, let's just go on because the last slide anyways. Well, host countries often try to channel FDI investment into new infrastructure and other projects to boost development. It can result in the transfer of soft skills to training and job creation. The availability of more advanced technologies for the domestic market. I think it's simple, straightforward, that once you have so much FDIs, the country's job creation goes better. Soft skills are those skills of language, of IT, of learning new skills. They are improved, and basically new technologies come into the domestic market. If you have any questions and answers regarding this first globalization presentation, you are more than welcome to contact me through my phone or my email address. I hope it was not too boring. I will try to make it interesting with more examples in the coming weeks, and with books I have already shared with you guys, but I'll be going much more into examples next week, hopefully. Thank you very much. Thank you.